Hello, and welcome to a Bon Mott's production of
Masterpiece Theatre,
where we review critically acclaimed cinema spanning the breadth of human filmmaking.
Masterpiece Theatre,
Spoilers, mature content, inappropriate language. Join us.
Masterpiece Theatre. Masterpiece Theatre.
Hi, and welcome back to Los Signals Reviews, the AFI 100 list, movie by movie. Today we're tackling number 15, 2001: A Space Odyssey. I keep wanting to say oddity. Sorry. So I don't know that.
Both will work.
I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer. Scott Thurla.
And I've been recycled in space. How's it going?
Stephen Ramosi.
Hello, Ian.
I can't let you do that, Stephen. And Chris Morgan.
Good evening.
Okay, all right. And Stephen, would you like to start us off with the funny log line?
I think it's just, what a long, strange trip it's been.
Parentheses in space, of course.
In space!
I won't do that as often in the episode.
And emphasis on the strange, at least for me. All right, so Scott, would you like to begin with the plot of this movie?
I'll certainly try. No, I mean, it's fairly simple. You get the opening montage, if you will, of the dawn of man, as a film informs us, where monkeys are evolving, learning social habits, and discover a strange monolith seemingly on Earth, and that seemingly imparts to them the ability, greater intelligence, essentially, and learn how to use tools. Then we cut to the future, where man has seemingly colonized the moon and other objects in space, so forth, on a mission that is secret in a sense, because they've unearthed either another monolith or the same one on the moon, which apparently sent a signal out towards Jupiter, and there's a mission to go find the source of the signal, during which the crew of 5 humans and 1 computer, the famous HAL 9000, runs into a couple of problems. The computer is basically programmed to make sure the mission continues at all costs, has a little disagreement with the last remaining human survivor, Dave, and eventually they make it to the source of the signal, which is apparently another monolith near or around Jupiter. Dave gets sucked into a vortex, and the famous sort of like mind screw ending, he sees himself as an old man, then turns into a star child, floats towards Earth, and credits. That's pretty much the plot. So I know I'll just address this right now. Yeah, this movie is 2.5 hours long, and it somehow feels a bit longer than that because of the way it's set up. There's not a lot to it. It's just a bunch of stuff floating in space, people doing stuff in space quietly, silently, sometimes to a droning soundtrack. So like, while the core plot is fine, like a mysterious alien object is discovered and they need to investigate it, the core scientists and the team is sent out. So yeah, like, it's fine. I'm looking at a 2 just because of the sometimes, like, it's a lot of drawn out shots, which, yes, this movie is famous for, but that doesn't make it like the most engaging thing ever either. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed this movie. I liked it a lot, but having seen it this recent view, I think I'm going to give it a solid 2, but certainly not a 3 for plot. And I will toss it to you guys right now.
Well, I don't dislike this movie, but it ruffles my feathers, if you will. And I never knew that I'd be watching this movie again. The last time I saw it, I'm like, I saw it. I'm done. I never get to see it again. I had to watch it again. I actually didn't really mind the drawn-out segments, because a lot of that is
it's
narrative,
or it's
atmospheric and thematic, I think, towards what like the realistic, what it'd be like in, or not realistic being space, but the kind of long drawn-out periods in space.
Sure.
The problem I have is, again, everything is so intertwined into what your interpretation of this film is, and we'll get to that with these, but like, it's either a very strong narrative if you want to go with this path of themes, or a very weak narrative if you want to go with this path of themes.
I see what you mean here.
And again, it goes. We recently watched another movie which had an ambiguous ending as well, and this is one of the forerunners of the really ambiguous ending.
Sure.
And I don't know whether to give it credit for that or not.
Fair enough. I'm just saying I'm cutting it up. I see what you mean completely. That's why I'm giving it a 2. But
I guess I'll have one last thought quickly in there is that what you remember from this, I think, is the HAL 9000 sequence and the very tight narrative that's not really... It's a third of the movie.
Yeah.
What you don't really remember is not the meandering, but the kind of thoughtful and musing aspects of the rest of this. So again, maybe I'm being drawn towards a 2 as well.
This is a movie that I saw once a long time ago, and this is the first time I'm watching it again. I don't know why I haven't seen it more, or why I haven't seen it more recently, or why whatever. But really, I think I like this movie a whole lot, and I think that I need to watch it again because there's in the silence of this movie there's a lot packed in there, and I want to try and figure out the parts that I didn't exactly completely wrap my head around, or it's not like it's a difficult plot to understand, but there are a lot of things that I think are buried somewhat underneath the surface in terms of just this symbolism of what's going on on the sets, like a lot of things that are nothing is really spelled out in this film, and I really want to check it out again and see what I missed. I think
just to respond to you for a minute is there could be, but it also could be like space, a whole lot of void with scattered pieces
in between
of like a planet or a narrative here, and maybe sometimes you stumble upon a greater thing, but it could just be long pockets of nothing. And I think that this movie caters to people who want to read into things without necessarily saying anything, so thus anyone can draw whatever they want out of it.
So let me respond to that then. I think knowing, and I granted this is taking like outside information, but knowing what I know about Stanley Kubrick as a filmmaker, and knowing what I know about how film works from other movies, I know that there are elements of this that are not put into this movie by accident, and perhaps I didn't completely grasp exactly why certain things are in there, but they're there for a reason, and there is meaning behind them. Especially knowing, as I said, that Kubrick made the movie, he never left anything to chance, right? It wasn't like he was like, "Oops, I accidentally made this, like, did this shot like this." Like Kubrick was one of the most like
meticulous,
exactly meticulous filmmakers that has ever existed.
Yeah, I love Kubrick. This could be more Eyes Wide Shut than, let's say, The Shining. Yeah,
I don't agree with that, but that's fine.
Eyes Wide Shut.
This is my least favorite Kubrick film. I would just go into it.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I think regardless, I think I'm gonna give this a 3. I really enjoyed what I saw the whole way through. Obviously, I love the HAL narrative, but everything else is kind of like the whole scene. The scenes like before they get to the moon and like when they get to the moon and all that stuff, and this isn't necessarily go into plot so much, but the whole scene when Dave is going to Jupiter is visually incredible. I know that you were mentioning as we were watching it that you were like bored of seeing the American Southwest in different color schemes and stuff like that, but like I really loved that part. I enjoyed it a lot. So, I mean, that notwithstanding, everything in the HAL part of the movie, where HAL is involved, is riveting, I think.
It's the strongest part. I agree.
Everything before that, when... Like, the entire part at the beginning with the monkeys, I get why that's there, but, there's no dialogue or anything. It's interesting. But certainly not the most interesting thing in the movie. But like everything, like before they go to the moon, while they're like talking about going to the moon, or en route to the moon, and when they get to the moon and they find the monolith, I thought that stuff was interesting as part of like the grander scheme of things that were going on. So I'm gonna give it a 3 for
fair enough.
plot.
What do you got, Chris?
Well, there's actually a lot I could say about this, but I'm going to start off by saying I'm definitely giving it 3. The ending where he's going through the Stargate, I agree. I would have, editing wise, did get a little indulgent, but I'm not going to take that away from it.
You tell Kubrick how to edit now?
No.
Go on.
It just as a matter of personal taste.
Sure.
But there is an astronaut, and I was trying to look it up before, who wrote a book. I can't remember, but his whole point of the book was space is boring. And I mean, it is. I mean, it is to what you said before. It's a void. There's a whole lot of nothing. And, but to me, I kind of, the movie's definitely in 3 definitive acts, and a lot of this is probably going to come up in themes. I was
going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. I found each one intriguing. They're kind of tackled differently. So again, I'm not really sure if this is going to go into style and themes, but to me, it reminds me of a Jean Moreau painting in that you have things that are on the surface. You've got the designs or whatever that are open to interpretation. You know, you could take it literally, or you could take it figuratively, or you could take it both. But behind that, if you've ever seen a Moreau painting, there's just this depth of color. It looks like, if you see a print, it looks like it's like 1 or 2 shades. But you look at, there's this depth of color. And that's kind of the way I view this movie, is that I've seen this movie several times. I love this movie. It is our Blu-ray that we watched. And there's a lot to take away from this movie. I understand. I'm going to start right off the bat and say, anybody who doesn't like this movie for whatever reason, I understand that. You know, it is definitely if you take the middle section where we're talking with Haywood Floyd and he's talking to the Russians, and you know, you take that as its own science fiction thing, it's got a different narrative. You take the last third, I'm going to say up until the point where he goes to the Stargate, that definitely has a more conventional narrative. But I think in terms of conveying that space is boring. I mean, yeah, I'm always going to bring up Star Trek, but there is a point in The Next Generation why they invented the holodeck. Sure. I mean,
he was doing this the whole movie, by the way.
Well, this is a movie that is one of those things where it is influenced so much, it is kind of hard to
detach it. Yeah, I get you,
but my whole point is everything. If you look at a lot of science fiction afterwards, basically to anything, there's always activities, because the one common theme it seems to be after this movie is that space is boring and that there has to be some kind of recreation. I mean, even if you looked at this film, you know, they've got like a little tanning bed. You definitely get a sense that, you know, there's a certain monotony to it. And whether or not you find that interesting is completely subjective. I am not going to...
Sure, your mileage may vary.
I'm not going to argue anybody if they don't like this movie. I found it a very interesting movie. My only takeaway would be that when he goes to this Stargate or goes into the monolith, there is a couple minutes that I felt like, okay, they kind of got cool with the effects and everything. And I understand how you want to interpret that, but I don't think that's enough to take away from the movie. So I'm giving it a solid 3. This is a very hard movie to judge. So
it is very strange.
I just want to reiterate that how much credit you want to give Kubrick and how much credit you want to give the themes that you see in it is the thing that it's one of those things where the painting where
it's a Rorschach test.
Yeah, it's a Rorschach test. It's like where you lie and like what you want to look into.
Determines your. Sure.
This is either a great movie or it's a terrible movie, and I lie more on the side of like I want something more concrete. I want something more interesting, and it's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. And I see a causal chain throughout it, which we'll get into in the next session.
Right.
But I don't think it's, again, one of his best ones.
But that's exactly why I compared it to a Jean Moreau painting, because My uncle had a picture book of Jean Moreau, and he was very influenced by him. And I looked at him like, what? So I went to the MoMA, and I saw one, and if I could take this, if I had this thing, I would devote an entire room to just this painting. Because when I saw it in person, okay, and you see the lines, you see the depth of color, I felt like I could walk into it. But that's my whole point is I understand if people look at Jean Moreau and see some squiggly lines with some color behind it. But I also see that if you may or may not, when you see it live, really see the things, because everybody's perception is different. And I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be pretentious about this. I'm just trying to say from an interpretive thing that you may get something out of it. Somebody else may not get something out of it. Your style of what you consider in terms of aesthetic might be different than mine, or, that's why I'm saying that I cannot fault anybody for any criticism for it, which is why it's going to be very hard to be combative on this one.
Okay, well, speaking of combative, Steve-O, would you like to...
That's a great thing. Speaking of combative, hey, Steve-O.
Let's talk about the meaning behind this work of art.
So Chris touched on something earlier that hadn't really occurred to me, but is super obvious now that it's been said out loud. The idea of the mundaneness of space, like the void, the boring idea of nothing else being around, and
nothing else to do.
This movie's almost like a war, right? Like it's just a bunch of boring scenes punctuated by instant, like brief moments of like really intense action and things like that, or intense emotion,
intense interactions, we'll call them.
And I think that's an interesting point that could probably be explored at length. Also, obviously, there is the AI aspect of this with HAL 9000 and whether or not AI can be trusted, or kind of looking into the implications of artificial intelligence from the standpoint of 68 this came out, I believe.
Yep.
From the standpoint of somebody in 1968. That's a really interesting discussion that Kubrick was trying to have super early on in terms of
using that idea as a plot device.
In terms of talking about computers and where they were going and kind of where we would be with them further out, looking ahead, 33 years or whatever. And I think there's something to be said for like, I'm like I said, I'm still trying to wrap my head around a lot of things in this movie. Like, is like the isolation of space part of the reason for the space madness of HAL, I guess, or like, what exactly do you think was the cause of his meltdown? Was it the monolith? Yeah. Right? I guess it was supposed to be, but that's never outright said.
It's just sort of heavily implied, but
it is certainly implied, right?
At least that's how I always take it. So if you allow me to jump in, it's sort of like, as you said, this is like a big lightning rod of a question, especially for this film, because it's going to come down to like what you extract from it and why and what angle you take. So a number of them have been, of course, proposed by fans and detractors of the film over the years. So I'm not going to say which one or ones I do and do not buy into or get out of. I'm just going to give themes a one because it generates so much conversation around it, whether or not you think it's like legit in a sense.
So the more ambiguous you are,
Yes.
The stronger the one you'll give a film?
Not quite, but like for this one, yes, because of its influence, I'll say. And even like, audiences who have seen it fresh surely must have had conversations like this without even the benefit of hindsight and how it influenced other fiction and so forth down the line.
I think there's a difference between. Let me just jump in for 1 second here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I know you're just going to say something, but I think there's a difference between ambiguity to no end and ambiguity in terms of this movie, which is clearly there's a point to the ambiguity. Right?
I was more to use Scott's promise trolling him.
Yes, I understand.
No, right. So the one common object that runs throughout all of the different acts
Various vignettes,
is the monolith.
Right.
The interesting thing to say whether the monolith is beneficial or I would say malicious, or just neutral kind of state, because the minute our ancestors found the monolith, they turned to
They
violence.
became violent. Yep.
Yep.
And that's often cited.
Theoretically, Hal also achieved a level of consciousness beyond what he was programmed to. And there's that big argument over not only the dangers of AI, but also what defines consciousness with Hal, because it seems like he's going through a really painful death at the end of it.
Sure.
But so, and then I guess like the big debate is over what is the Star Child and the evolution of humanity with that, and what the purpose of it all is.
Etc. Yeah.
But again, it in a way I feel it's almost unimportant
Okay.
to the end of what all of that particularly mean, what the end goal of the progenitors were. It's more of how we use technology and a discussion
Regardless,
on that, whether it's us using bones to kill people, Americans and Russians not trusting each other, although collaborating to further themselves into space, or whether it's a AI gaining a little bit of sentience and then all of a sudden becoming fearful of it losing its own life.
Right. As the the monkeys did, like so does Hal, right?
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty definitive theme in this, regardless of what the Star Child means at the end.
Anything else at the end. I like that
I'm
angle.
going to discount, like, because I think that is ambiguity for ambiguity's sake, and almost in the sense of like, there's no even pointer. Here it is. You interpret it. I think though that the role of the not the Atlas, the monolith is very clear, and the themes behind it are. So I'm going to give it a 1.
No, I like that angle. I'm sorry. I have a quick wrap up for my thoughts on themes. Like I said, because you can still extract a lot of things from it, regardless of, again, what side of the fence you lie on. I think there's enough there. And of course, your mileage may vary on its level of pretentiousness and, just there just for its sake or for some reason that you can, again, impart upon it. But nevertheless, there's enough substance to warrant a 1 from me. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm just going to say this, and I think it's going to encapsulate what you had said initially. And I think this is also going to be kind of a meta narrative on the entire film. But I'm going to say it's a search for meaning. It's going to be a search for what it means to exist. Like the monolith, if you want to take it in terms of, I read the book, but I didn't read the original short story, the Sentinel, upon which this was originally based. But if you want to take it at the monolith as some kind of an alien, whether an observer that kind of breaks the observation thing and becomes influential. I mean, because there's always this thing of like when the proto-human throws the bone in the air and it transitions to space. You're always looking beyond. You're evolving. And then when they find the monolith on the moon, there's this political aspect to it, and Floyd gets to the moon, and all of a sudden there's this high-pitched signal that goes to Jupiter, and then you get to Jupiter, and you have all this stuff, and then Dave Bowman goes into the monolith. I mean, it's always going forward to search for meaning, but in the movie itself, looking as a piece of art, everybody in each act and each thing, we're looking for meaning in the movie. The movie in itself, to me, seems to be looking for meaning. I think it's
I like that.
I'm giving it a very, very strong 1 because it does, and I don't think the interpretive aspect of it, whatever Kubrick may have going into it, has given us enough of a smorgasbord upon which we can have these discussions.
Here's the thing: if it was his intent to actually have no meaning in it besides the joke that we're searching for meaning in something that has nothing, then I would give the entire movie a 10. I can't say that's the. I can't say that's the.
That is the divine. It's Kubrick's Divine Comedy.
But but as I pointed out, it's to me what's important is not what it all means, but it's how humans or the different consciousness react to discovery of a potential
to that thing.
meaning.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I like all of that, and I think it all deserves 1, as we discussed.
And there is like a direct line in this movie, as you mentioned, like the monolith leads to a greater intelligence of some kind, leads to violence, right? Every time, except for the end, when he runs into the frickin' thing and becomes a baby in
And we don't. That
an
baby
egg.
could be a.
Or it could all be a dying dream.
Could cause the end of the earth.
It could be a rebirth. Like eventually, man's going to.
I haven't seen 2010, so I don't know.
Right. It could be X,
if
Y, or
that-
Z. That's
well,
a factor.
2010 kind of takes a less interpretive thing and goes more with the alien aspect, but
Okay.
not important for the.
but not important for this. But in terms of like the Star Child, you can look at it as some kind of rebirth. That like
Yeah.
within every time we strive for something else, there's always a rebirth for interpretation.
Sure.
Ooh. Anyway, so speaking of giant demon babies in the sky, Chris, talking about the antagonist.
This is great. This is going to be one of those things where I'm going to fall back on something Scott and I always go back into the I'm going to say the unknown.
The abstract of space.
The unknown is the antagonist, because you can in each act name an antagonist. You know, with the proto-human, you have the different tribes, because that's going to set up the tribal conflict that we'll later see in the
with the nations.
With the social situation, where there is a certain adversarial aspect of it. And then you get into Jupiter, where there is an adversarial aspect between Poole and Bowman and Hal. And then at the end, where Bowman's kind of confronting the unknown and seeing himself in each stage, there is always this thing where you're trying to get ahead of the unknown, and you're always, in a sense, behind it. If that makes sense. So it's kind of, it's one of those things where it's ambiguous, but by the same token, to me, going back to themes and going back to everything, that if there is going to be an antagonist, it is going to be that unknown. It's to be striving. That again, this is going to fall into one of my antagonist things, where the antagonist doesn't have to be a villain,
Sure.
but more of a catalyst. What drives the story, what drives the characters. And I think there's a reason when you guys came up with the Mott's, I just threw my head, when you came up with the Mott cycle, that right after themes, you put antagonists in there, because an antagonist doesn't necessarily have to be a villain. An antagonist has to be a catalyst. And
Sure.
usually,
We've said that before, for sure.
but it's
not a 1-to-1 ratio.
But
Doesn't
I
have to
think
be.
into this film, it's one of those things that definitely implies where you have this thing. It could be the monolith. It could be, it could be the monolith overall. What does the monolith represent? But what is each act? What is the antagonist in each act? What makes you move to the next part of the film? I'm going to give it a strong 1 because it is, again, nebulous. I am not going to fault anybody for not seeing what I see and calling bullshit on it. But to me, the antagonist is the unknown. The antagonist is for striving something that we can never get to, but always want to get to. So I'm giving it a strong 1. That was my very, again, nebulous interpretation of this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really disagree with that. There's an argument that, at least for one act of this movie, Hal is the antagonist, and probably the most memorable, concrete antagonist.
And he's probably the most sympathetic character in the whole movie.
Maybe, but he certainly has an antagonistic angle to it.
him or Dave, I guess. Or
That one primate in the beginning really.
the one that got murdered. But yeah, I mean, there's. I'm not gonna go too much into what you were talking about, Chris, because while I agree with that, you said a lot about it, and you kind of touched on a lot of what I would say. Hal, as a concrete antagonist throughout this, is really fucking menacing. Like, as just a red dot on the screen. Obviously, Kubrick is a master with
making that shit seem scary
and making making something simple seem like more than it is, and just that calm voice that Hal has is really effective and obviously very memorable. Like, everybody know, like, whether or not you've seen this movie, you've seen
various references
to it throughout pop culture, and like, oh, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that, or like, goodbye, Dave, that type of thing. So, I can't give this a 0 in any aspect in terms of that.
No, I agree. I'm going to speak broadly because you guys have now both covered things I might have said, but I think you can say each act has its own sub-antagonist, each of which was effective, and overall, you can like combine them, or again, you can give it an abstract thing as well, or both at the same time, really. So I'm going to call it a pretty solid 1 for myself as well, just based on all of those factors.
Just to go back to Chris's speech for a moment, even like Hal was motivated by the fear of the unknown, and like this is mortality has a lot, specifically for Hal, because not every character is driven by fear of mortality, but like that fear of the unknown, or what things mean, what is all of that aspect. You were correct, Chris, on that, and so I'm going to give it a 1.
Yeah.
No.
All right, and on to me with protagonist. So, again, this doesn't have yes, like Hal, it has a concrete protagonist for maybe
a section of the story.
Half a movie, maybe 1/3 of it, or
60% of the movie, or so. 65.
But I would say for generally, it's in a way living beings in search for meaning and for solving that what antagonizes them, the unknown, searching for beyond and all of that. And you can definitely get the feeling of the primates at the beginning, with the scientists going to the moon base, with the people traveling to Jupiter and all that, and the audience trying to figure out what the hell the Star Baby means. So I'm going to give it a 1.
Maybe that's funny. Like, again, similar to what I just said, I think you can sort of see, at least for the ship section, we'll call it, that Dave is pretty much the protagonist. But again, I want to build on what you said, like humanity at large, I suppose, like as a species itself, as portrayed by those, via those filters. So yeah, like, and if you want to look at the corporeal figure of Dave himself, I think he was a solid protagonist. But again, overall, I think we agree that you have to, at least in this case, perhaps more credence is due to like abstracter or greater embodiments of it as a whole. Yeah. But I still think it does a strong job of portraying that. So,
yeah, and I think that I kind of like identify with the striving nature of all of the characters in this, from the
stars,
from the apes, literally up, through old Dave or Star Baby Dave or whatever,
old man Star Baby Dave,
old man Star Baby. But it's I get these characters. I get, like, if I don't get a lot of things about this movie, I get kind of why these characters act the way that they act. Sure. And especially Dave, like I get his motivations and things like that. So it's a strong one for me for protagonist as well.
I wasn't sure to give protagonist at first. Ian, I couldn't say what you said any better and what you guys followed up on, so I'm giving it a 1.
Slap on a 1.
All right, Scott, talk about secondary.
So this is one I was debating as well, because given everything we just said, again, that doesn't really leave much. Like, space itself as a supporting like setting, I don't know.
That's actually pretty good.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the best thing I've got, because I don't think any actual like actor is enough, even collectively. Like, they're just there sort of like as not furniture, as we sometimes say about side characters, but they certainly have just tangential relevance to the story and the messages as a whole. So, but if really you want to like somewhat seriously discuss the fact that space itself perhaps provides that role, then of course I'm going to give that a 1. But if we're looking at just actors and characters and so forth, that I'd give a 0 in this case.
I fall on the side of the use of space, not in the sense of like the
yes,
thing, but as more of a stylistic aspect.
Okay, and I could definitely, I could be
the character aspect.
I could be easily swayed to do it that way. So I think I'm going to go default 0 for now, and I'll toss it to you, gentlemen.
It's I don't like doing like abstract things as supporting characters in general, but in this movie I might almost I
make an exception.
I might have to make an exception, because space like outer space in this movie provides this whole range of kind of
An arena
something
in which to
that
explore.
emotions are like thrown at throughout the movie, and kind of given back from. You feel like the void very intensely in a lot of points in this movie, and you feel the intimate setting of being trapped in a tin can in that void a lot, I think, or at least I did. But if we're not talking about outer space as a supporting character, then the only other one that I would even really consider for a 1 would be Frank and
Floyd at the end or beginning. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like Floyd at the beginning, but
still, right? It's not much.
I mean, I almost consider him the protagonist of that act, right? Like,
okay.
He's not even a secondary
He's
character.
not even a good protagonist.
And he's fine, but he's not. There's no kind of
much
arc
substance
that
to it.
goes on
Yeah,
with him.
exactly.
So
Frank has like a minimal arc at least, and like
What do you want for your birthday?
I'm not sure what I'm going to give this yet.
futuristic 60s space stewardesses do not do it for you.
No, they were great, but they didn't have enough. They were
They did it for me in one way, but not for the plot.
They were style
Yes.
over. They were style over
Yes.
character.
For sure.
But yeah, Chris, what do you think? I'm still deciding.
Well, this is probably going to foreshadow when we get to dialogue, but I liked the textures that the supporting characters gave, whether it was the Russians, things, the other pilots on the moon base, the collective of the primordial humans. I'm really, if we're going to talk about the 3 characters in the third act, Frank and Dave. Dave was definitely the protagonist. Hal was definitely the antagonist, and so
Frank was there.
Would then be being the supporting character, but Frank's parents calling him, and the news reporter who is interviewing them, and I love the way they said we're on what is an 8-minute, 60-minute time delay, and they edit it together. I mean, all of us as editors will understand that when we had to cut out bits of silence when we're all sitting here trying to figure out what to say.
The silence of space. Yes.
But I think this is one of those situations where the supporting characters were necessary to flesh out. So you couldn't get the antagonism that may have been carried through from the primordial humans without that conversation with the Russians. That you get the friendly conversation, but the suspicion underneath. And to me, the supporting characters were more textures. Probably until you get to Frank. But I don't think the movie would be what it was, or the message would be, or that it would be a complete world without the supporting characters. So structurally, I have to give them a 1.
I just want to say that saying you like the Russians is a very dangerous thing to say in today's Cold War environment.
I don't know. Perhaps that's true. But my final thought on secondary is I think I'm going to do what you suggested and all that stuff. I see what you mean about them adding texture and stuff, Chris, but that's to me more style as well as he dies over there. But given all that, I'm still going to have a 0 here, and all the credit that I'm not putting this, even Space as supporting character, as I jokingly suggested, but also could be a legit angle. All that's going to be shifted to style, so I'm going to leave a 0 here for secondary.
Never mind.
I kind of I think I'm going to agree with that.
So yeah, does that convince you?
For this movie is strangely subverting a lot of the ways that I normally score these categories, and this one in general
That's
as well.
That's what Kubrick will do to you. But I see what you mean. Yeah.
I like all these supporting characters, but they are mostly set dressing, and they're a brilliant addition to the style, but they are not really
to the overall
fleshed
story
out characters, right? So
yes, agreed.
I think I'm going to give them a 0 for this. And despite how much I love the use of space in this, I'm not going to give that.
That also goes to style.
Supporting role, it's clearly going to be heavily involved in the style of the movie, but I'm going to give it a 0 for this.
Steve, continue talking with dialogue.
The dialogue was terse, we'll say. There wasn't that much of it, but what there was was, to me, very impactful. I liked it a lot, and I don't have that much to say about it because they didn't have that much to say about anything. And but I like the dialogue all the way through. There was never a moment of cringe worthiness. Maybe there was for you. There wasn't for me.
Little girl at the beginning.
That didn't bother me at all. I know it bothered you because you said something when that was on. That didn't bother me at all. Like, I didn't say anything at the time, but
Sure.
I actually found that to be kind of like realistic with how little kids react,
Are annoying.
or certain little kids react to things.
Sure.
Yeah, but like that part didn't bother me, and the dialogue all the way through was like it was exactly what Kubrick needed to make this intensely stylistic movie, and it did the exact job that it needed to, and for that I have to give it a 1.
No, I mean, I will largely agree, but I'm going to bring up maybe, again, like, you said something just previous that, like, this movie's subverting the way you score things, like, normally on our scale. So, allow me to introduce this possible angle that you just said. There was, characters did not talk a lot, but when they talked, when they actually had exchanges, it was fine. But, like, the silence is itself, like, the lack of dialogue is almost itself a dialogue.
I agree with
right?
that, yeah.
So,
HAL 9000.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's kind of a given. Like,
you're right.
Everyone
Hal is
knows that
amazing.
shit.
Yeah.
I am
But even Hal does
I
not
am
talk
just
all that
now
much.
kicking myself for not like including that.
But I was
in
getting
my
to that
talk.
too. But you're absolutely right. Like, of course, like if you count his stuff, it's stellar.
No, your point about silence, though, is.
But that's what I
very,
wanted to
very-
bring up. So that's probably like, and on top of everything else, but again, bizarrely, the lack of dialogue sort of earns dialogue a better one than it would have otherwise.
In terms of functionality, the dialogue was needed because it did give you it's basically what I said about the supporting characters. It kind of helps flesh out the world. But like if you're talking about, and I think the silence is, you're spot on with that. I hadn't thought about that. It's fucking brilliant. But also, if you're going to say dialogue as written, you get to Hal and Dave and Frank and all that stuff. If there's nothing you've liked before this in terms of dialogue, the written word, that would push it to a 1. To me, I enjoyed all the conversations with the Russians, and in the boardroom, it kind of fleshed out things. And I'm using fleshed out, and I've got to say, if you're not watching the video, you're not seeing me laughing and setting Ian off laughing.
Unfortunately,
because when you said that, I was really serious on this, and when you said something about the Russians and the perfect.
You're the one saying shit about the
and
Russians.
the political climate.
Brought up the Russians like 4 times.
I noticed that the daughter said something.
Can't say
about,
Russians in the review. Russians.
I noticed that the daughter said something about the babysitter being in the bathroom, and then him looking at how to operate the 0G thing, and when you said that, all that came in. All I could think is P-tape, and there's a joke in there about in space nobody can hear your P-tape or something like that. But
What the fuck are you talking about?
but no, I'm
mind.
just
Don't explain it. Please don't explain
there's this whole thing. As soon as
It's
you said
better this way.
as soon as you said Russian political climate, I thought of all the urination all the zero gravity's urination jokes that could have been in it. I'm sorry, I just had to explain that.
I unfortunately missed the opportunity to use those jokes.
I couldn't formulate the joke. There's a joke
worry
in there
about it.
somewhere. Anybody in the audience, if you're reading this and
fine.
you want to put a comment and you want to make your own P joke, that's fine.
I seriously hope you're reading
somebody will make
our
a PJ.
video
In
review right
space, nobody can hear you pee.
now. Sure.
Okay.
What's happening?
We
Hold
have to. We
It's
have
far
turned
too
to-
late. Chris, stop talking. Ian,
So
go.
I'm going to bring this back on track for a moment. All right. One thing that I really like is
We're all going mad in space.
Sorry.
is the body language throughout this.
That's a good call too.
The looks that Dave, because a lot of this movie is focused on his face reacting.
Yep.
But I also want to say that Hal,
Cutting to Hal.
It's amazing.
Cutting to
the looks that
Hal's-
Hal gives.
but here's the thing:
I'm not even joking.
Are brilliant.
Yeah.
There's such like pregnant stares of a
just a red light. Yeah,
red light.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And
That's a very good call.
When going through silences, just like them kind of trying to assess each other's moves are like again.
Yeah.
This particular scene, the house scene and the versus Dave, is what makes this film really, really memorable.
Oh, I definitely agree. Yeah, everything we just said, I'm
Strong
definitely
one.
giving Dialogue a 1 for that. And
but to
all the
your
other
point,
things.
Ian, with the focus on Dave's eye at the end when he's going through the Stargate and how they had the when they showed Dave going through that, how it was a still, and then when they showed his eyes, it was always blinking. And then when Hal was watching them read lips, one thing I noticed was that you got to they gave you a perspective of the way the lighting was and the way the center was when they were talking to Dave on the left and Frank on the right. You got a sense where even though the camera from the audience point of view could see like who Hal was looking at, you got a sense that it was all in a scope. But for Kubrick to tell the audience who Hal was focusing on, so you got an idea that Hal was focusing on each one, even though you could see that he was looking through it solely through one lens.
No, I remember that scene. You're right about that.
Yep.
So Chris, keep speaking about style.
I'm giving it a 1. The dialogue a 1. I'm giving style a 1, and I am sorry for digressing before. But style, style is one of these things like themes where you could take any one bit of this movie and discuss the style of it. You could discuss it as a whole. I thought probably if we're gonna say there's one constant through the whole thing, it is the use of silence. It is the use of, let us just say, it is the use of negative space.
Yeah.
In that space is a void and it is a vacuum and it is...
And all connotations of that phrase, of course.
So you're dealing with it audially, negative space, because there is no sound in space, and they really worked with the fact that there is no sound. I also like the fact that there was no composer for this film, that he took things like from Richard Strauss and Ligeti and so forth, and that's not atypical for Kubrick to use composers, because he uses Bartok in The Shining and so forth. But I like that the fact that there's no space, there's no audible that we can pick up sound of space. There is if with I'm not going to get into physics of it, but I just
get a physics lesson here.
Yeah, but because I'm going to fuck it up, and Scott and my wife are going to have to correct me. And
don't worry about it. So don't do it. Going about style.
But in terms of style, I thought, like, if you were to look at it at an in the universe thing, I thought it was interesting to bring pre-existing compositions into space, because let's face facts, you go to a car, you bring your own music or whatever. I thought that was a nice contrast in universe in this film to the space where man's bringing in like the dialogue. It's bringing his own sound or her own sound into this vacuum. I'm definitely, that's one aspect of style that I'm focusing on, and just in that, I'm going to give it a 1. I could go on about the visuals, but I think that's my whole point.
Well, we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, I'm going with 1 Kubrick, and like that was going to be my answer if it was going to come to me first. But no, seriously, like, this film is influential, and it's so famously studied specifically for its composition of shots as a film, and there's so many aspects to it. Like Chris just went on about one single one. You can pick out many. I'll just mention a bunch. Lighting, again, set design, how they did the practical sets and how they made it look as if there was zero gravity and all that stuff. And just like, again, cutting to the shots of Hal and cutting shots close-ups of Dave, all that stuff, because Kubrick was who he was. He knew how to make a fucking awesome film and just how to framing, all that. All those things, all those topics are so well meshed together in this, and as applied to the themes and so forth that we spoke of earlier. That's why you have to give it a 1, Kubrick 1, as I said.
Yeah, I mean, like, this movie has been spoken about for its stylistic elements since 1968, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's no surprise that it is a incredibly well done, well crafted stylistic
and stands
movie.
the test of time on that front for sure.
Just some of the incredible shot, like the off kilter camera angles that are going on the entire time they're in space are just fucking brilliant. The way that it's shot, and like, you know, I get the impression that Kubrick was like, hey, I need this at like a 72 degree angle, not a 75 degree angle. Like, just
That's
like
funny,
crazy shit like that. Like, you know, you see how perfectly these shots are framed in their like really off kilter like angles that you
Sort of
never
skewed.
see.
Yeah.
Like, he had to invent a whole different cinematographic like
Cinematographic.
a whole different language of cinematography, I guess, to make this movie,
Yeah.
which
I like
in
that
and of
phrase.
itself, well, one element of the style of this movie is incredible. As you mentioned, the sound design is incredible. The cinematography is amazing. Just the way that the sets are designed is incredible. Like walking around as though, you know, you can just like walk up a goddamn wall because you're in space and gravity doesn't work the same way. Despite the fact that I don't think it really works the way that it looked in this movie. But
Again, this avoid physics lessons, but
yeah.
it looks really cool and
right.
it's convincing in that sense.
It's just a mind fuck of like cinematography in the way that he does these shots and the way that he does it. So.
A mindfuck of cinematography. I could have said it better.
And to your point, in between this and, you know, modern effects, looking at it from an effects point of view, science fiction between this and, like, say now that we've got better effects, getting the idea that there is no up and down in space, that there's this three-dimensional. I think the fact that they went for this verisimilitude, that, you know, things are spinning, that the gravity is created, it's not there. I think it did a really good job of creating the fact that there is no up and down in space, even though, like, when you get to Discovery as opposed to the space station and all that stuff, it had to be more of a flat angle, probably for practical reasons. But they really did a good job of showing that space, there's no up and down, that there is no...
It was it was convincingly disorienting, of course, as well. Yeah.
So I guess I have to be the contrarian here.
All right.
I'm giving it a 1. Don't worry.
Hated the style.
I just need to bring up 3 points that...
I think I know which one you're going to say, at least.
First is 1960s futurism is super obviously dated nowadays.
Yeah, of course.
$1.70 a phone call from the space station to Earth.
No, it's just... a lot of this is super 60s.
Yeah.
Like that guy's plaid suit that you loved
Oh, yes. Oh, that's amazing.
in the early meeting, yes.
That is timeless. 2,
Go on.
creepy ass star baby. 3,
Creepy ass Star Baby is creepy.
3, palette swap, Utah.
Low level acid trip. Low level flyover acid trip.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm fine with the low level acid trip of the wormhole or wherever he ends up in, but it's when he gets to the planet or whatever it is, and he's filming aerial shots of the Southwest and recoloring it like red and blue.
I get you.
It's really Kubrick. I know you're dead, but you could do better.
Those parts graded on you is what you're saying, and I think you got some legit gripes there.
But those are my 3. Some of them are actually nitpicks. Others are, I think, legitimate. I think the Southwest thing is a legitimate gripe. But overall, this is, as you guys said, it's brilliant every other way. So a 1 for that. All right, and on to me with recommendation. I have to recommend this because if you've never seen it before, you should. Historically, this is a very important film. However, I don't particularly enjoy this film. If I never see it again, I won't be upset. If I do see it again, I'll be watching the HAL 9000 YouTube clip of it or whatever. I'm going to give it a 1 because it's an important film, but it's not necessarily an enjoyable one.
Sure, to you, I get that, and I'm giving it a 1 too, of course, because it's number 15, I believe. Yeah, there's a reason it's so high on the list, and if you haven't seen it, you absolutely do yourself a favor and see it. And it's been a while, like it was for you guys and for me as well before this viewing. Yeah, it still stands up largely, more than it stumbles a bit, we'll say. So yeah, I absolutely recommend it. It's, I think, going to stay for a long time in the iconography of films, in a sense, So yeah, I do recommend 2001: A Space Odyssey. See it again or see it for the first time. Either way, it's worth a watch.
Yeah, it's definitely fucking watch 2001. If you've never seen it, you shouldn't have gotten this far in our podcast. You should have stopped immediately and gone and watched the movie and then come back and listen.
I highly recommend you watch it, Dave.
Yeah, it's a movie that and Ian, I hate and love to be contrarian with you in these episodes. I enjoy it quite a bit. I do want to watch it again and
You would, Steve.
see. yes, I do.
Speaking of antagonists.
Sure. Go on.
Anyway, it's a fantastic piece of filmmaking.
We can't agree on
Regardless
that
of whether or not you want to watch it again, it's an achievement in film. And if you want anything to do with film or are interested in film at all, watch this movie, of course. But even if you are just interested
even for the more
seeing,
casual.
even if you're just interested in seeing what 60s filmmaking had to offer, or like what movies from the 60s were like, like this is going to be
Their
the
vision.
top. This is going to be the top of the list.
Yeah.
In terms of that, so go watch it. Whoever the hell you are, I don't care who you are. You should watch this movie. It's one of the top movies for a reason, and I agree with where it's at.
Yeah,
on the AFI
exactly.
list. So that's a one for me.
I'm definitely giving it one. I love this movie. I loved it before walking into it. While we were watching it, I text my wife. I'm like, God damn, we got to watch this movie more often. It's a great movie. And listening to our conversation, I'm like sitting here going, I didn't think it was possible to love this movie as much as I did. And I love it more even after our conversation. Yes, I'm patting ourselves on the back, and I don't care. We deserve it. And the funny thing is, walking into this, based upon the narrative scale we use, I was kind of thinking I was going to give protagonist a 0. And Ian, you were the one who flipped that switch, and Scott and Stevo backed up on the protagonist, and I agree wholeheartedly. I absolutely love this movie. I recommend everybody see it. If you don't like it, I'm not going to. I understand why people's gripes are with the film. It is very, as with all art, it's subjective. I think it's, as a science fiction fan, I think it's an important film.
Yeah.
As a filmmaker, there's so much you can get out of this film. I absolutely adore it. I definitely give it a 1. I don't know what else to say without giving an essay on it. So,
All right. Well, I'll give out
there
the
you go.
scores.
Yeah, where does that leave us?
Chris, you give it a 10. Steve, a 9. And Scott, you and I are the curmudgeons of this.
I guess we'll be
episode
killed
with
off.
8s.
We'll be killed off in hypersleep. So
Oh, absolutely.
I think at some point we should get a curmudgeon award and put it in front of the person or people.
See, no,
It's coming
because
this season.
then I'd be extra curmudgeonly just to win that award.
Just to win.
Don't encourage him.
Making an 8.75 overall.
And that's perfectly fine. That's a very high score.
Yes.
I think it deserves it.
All right, any last thoughts?
I have one. I
Okay.
will leave you in service of the film. I will leave you with a philosophical question: who wrote the moon rules #1 on my monolith? That's it.
Well, I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, and 2001: A Space Odyssey was an elaborate hoax for him to film the moon landing. Scott Thurla,
And I'll be also writing my own monolith. See you till next time. See you.
Stephen Amosi,
And I'm half crazy all for the love of this movie.
and Chris Morgan.
good night.
We hope you've enjoyed your stay.
Masterpiece Theatre.
Join us again next time, won't you?
Masterpiece Theatre.
Editing and engineering by Scott Thurla. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.
Masterpiece